There's a big push in all of education, and specifically in my district, about project-based learning. And your video about how Khan Lab School does project-based learning, you talk about how it's done in a way that doesn't sacrifice the core skills. All right. Do you have any suggestions for how to scale up something like that in a traditional district or its model where the kids are not grouped by levels of independence or grouped by levels of mastery? Because I think that it's really tough to get through the core skills.
Great question, and I think it's another key tension. Now, I alluded to this tension in mastery learning, learning at your own time and pace versus grade level material, and what if a kid's falling behind or something like that. This is another tension that happens a lot, where historically in education you've had this debate. On one side, you'll have I would call, for lack of a better word, the traditionalists. Who would say, oh, it's really important for kids to really gain fluency in these core concepts and be able to do a lot of problems and get a lot of feedback on it because that's what they're assessed on, and it builds muscles that are important later in life. And then you would have kind of a broad category of folks who would call themselves, generally the progressives, who would say, well, no, we want to go more to an experiential learning model, a more project-based learning model. I think the tension historically is that people, because you had limited time and resources, you almost have to pick one or the other. And my view is that they're both really valuable, and the ideal is both. And our theory of change, and we try to put it into practice downstairs at KLS, and I've seen it done really well in a lot of schools with some of your classrooms and in other classrooms we visited, is if teachers are able to use a tool like Khan Academy to get more feedback, more practice, having students work at their zone of proximal development more frequently, in theory, it could free up more time to do some more experiential learning. I think on the experiential learning itself, the reason why I like that is then a teacher can feel confident that the students are getting the practice on the standards, because the only way to really hit all or most of the standards is to do it that way. I've seen kind of pure project-based learning classrooms that are trying to create projects that hit all of the standards. It's nearly impossible. Especially if it's an authentic project. If it's a truly authentic project, and what's interesting about authentic projects, we once ran a stock market simulation. And in theory, you can learn concepts about probability, you could learn concepts about negotiation. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can, but every person in that simulation might have a slightly different experience or might get slightly different things out of it. But we would all know that's an authentically good experience. So to answer your question, I don't think we have the tools yet to scale. But what I like to think about is if folks are able to use tools like Khan Academy to hit a lot of the standards, and that teachers can get confidence that the standards are being hit and have the data to know where to intervene where kids have gaps, that should liberate what the projects can be so that they can be more authentic and they don't have to be super granular about hitting every standard. Because I think actually a project where you look at all of the standards and then you try to kind of create something artificial around it, I think the students themselves will be like, oh, this is just it's not what it's supposed to be. It's like, trying to construct a novel where you have to use, these words versus just trying to create a great narrative. But it's an ongoing conversation that I'd love to explore with y'all.